because if you've ever had to deal with anyone with sickle cell who has had any bout of sickle cell, that you will understand that this next conversation is a very, very important one, particularly because there are always peculiarities that you may or may not be aware of. Even though everyone has malaria, medical practitioners will tell you that everyone has malaria parasites within their body, but the way different people react to malaria or the way it manifests through them is not the same for everyone, and perhaps the same thing for sickle cell. And that's why this morning we're having a conversation with a representative of the Sickle Cell Foundation in Nigeria that have a sickle cell awareness campaign going. Caleb Audu is the communications director. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe we should begin with that. Do you think there is significant understanding of what sickle cell is about, of how the people who have to live with it take it?
Yeah, I think the conversation around sickle cell is still prominent across the circle of a literate demographic. And when you look at the demographic of literacy, health literacy in Nigeria, you see those in the urban areas, but you see a large number of persons living in this condition. They live in our rural areas. And how effective is communication, health education, trickling down to this demographic? So there needs to be a bridge, that's a pathway to communicating directly what sickle cell disorder is about, accurate communication, not biased or communications, built around stereotypes, and segregation and probably religious and cultural sentiments, because that's what has brought us to this point as a nation. While the West embraced science and looked at root causes to solve the problem, we still drove the agenda of Abikun, Ogbanje, and the funny narratives that we built over the years. People with sickle cell can live over 20. If they are 20, they just die. But that's not true. So you see, we need to drive constructive, effective, accurate, balanced, sensitization, education across the fora.
Do you think the various segments of our community, of our various communities and publics, the economic space, the finance space, the educational space, even the health space, do you think they understand these peculiarities you're talking about?
Yeah, to an extent they do, but you see, I think empathy is still missing from our sense of approach to health and social development issues in this country. For example, in Nigeria, respectfully, persons living with sickle cell disorder don't even have access to insurance, health insurance, and they tell you it's not profitable for them. So that's already a bias cut out already. So I think we're still looking at this condition.
My apologies, does the NHIS also discriminate?
I'll try to be careful around this conversation, but you see, there's the policy in place, and there's also the implementation of policy in place. So idealism and reality is not really aligning per se. And you see that most of the hospitals that have access, or patients have access to NHIS services, are primary healthcare facilities, secondary healthcare facilities owned by the government. But how effective are primary healthcare facilities in providing comprehensive care for persons living with sickle cell disorder? Because the care cuts across a pyramid spectrum: prevention, comprehensive care, and cure. There's no primary healthcare facility or secondary healthcare facility in Nigeria that offers a bone marrow transplant program. It's expensive. And comprehensive care for persons with this condition cuts across leg ulcer treatment, transcranial Doppler scans to avoid stroke in children from the age of 2 to 18. That can get down with stroke, avascular necrosis, hip replacement surgeries required. These are extensive medical procedures these people need, down to routine medication, basic counseling, genetic counseling. You don't have professionals that are trained, empowered in the effective management of this condition. So we still need to do a lot as a collective to change and shift the narrative by carrying on an integrated approach. Embracing this wholesomely from our grassroots, empower people. So what you have in Guma local government as standard of care should be what you have in Lagos as standard of care as well. So if we can take on this approach, I think would be striding in the right direction.
Can we start from the home? Does the home
Oh, yes.
understand? Do they? Sometimes even the homes themselves are very scared of the entire thing. So is this something that we can begin from home?
Oh, yes. Basically, the home is the first and primary place for reinforcement, education. We grew up as children and we understood the construct of charity begins at home. And then we understood the concept of one child is a community's child, you know, and so the father and mother, they take responsibility for passing across knowledge and passing across, you know, relevant information that shaped our concept of, you know, what we know as, you know, right from wrong. And so from the home, and then caregivers as well. Persons living with this condition have caregivers. Not seeing persons with this condition as burden, but seeing them from a place of empathy, because many people still have a very flawed perspective. Why do parents know that they have the S genotype and then they still marry one another? But we are not having the right conversation. It's not fair, because in Nigeria we still have dilapidated laboratory infrastructure. You go there and get wrong genotype results. And that's what's causing the high incidence of this condition. So you see that this is causing a lot of, you know, it's a lot back and forth. So from the home front, I think parents should inform their children to know better, and then parents should also, you know, reinforce care and support for those already living with this condition, because our patient, the suicide rate amongst persons living with this condition right now is astronomically high because of lack of care, support, reinforcement. Your father can lose a job, mother can lose her job, because if one child has sickle cell, the entire family has sickle cell disorder. It's a burden that it's heavy to carry. So I think love, support, reinforcement, passing across accurate information to your next generation, so that as they are properly informed, they can make informed decisions as well. Yeah.
I think there is really a need to loud it, as you said earlier.
No, honestly.
So what's the plan?
So the plan is we're taking a very grassroots approach, you know, in educating the nation. And one way is that you look at Nigeria, our demographic, you see that 70% of our current population demographic are between the ages of 30 and below. And that's a strong youth demographic representation. And the young people are within the reproductive age, you know, bracket where they are about to, you know, come together, give birth to kids. So they are the ones that, you know, we need to focus on to shift the conversation of reducing in Nigeria, you know, 150,000 babies over are born every year with the condition. And before they turn 5, over 100,000 die from complications that can be avoided. So these are Nigeria. This is a medical health emergency. In Nigeria, for example, we have sickle cell is amongst the top 8 causes of child mortality in this country. It's among the top 10 non-communicable diseases in this country. We export sickle cell from Nigeria, as a matter of fact. We have the highest burden. So our sensitization projects now, we started our campus project, sensitization project, where we go across campuses, sensitizing, educating, and then starting advocacy groups on campuses for step down and sustainability, so that information is passed across from one set to another set, from one level to another level after matriculation. Another exercise that should happen should be an orientation around sickle cell disorder. And then we started our orientation program, a sensitization program as well, across NYSC camps in the country. Our target is to reach 774 local governments in Nigeria. And you can bear witness that across all the local governments in this country, you have, you know, viable representation of youth corps members. And then we're also driving to start a CDS group for sickle cell disorder. So from January till May this year, Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, we've been able to carry out this project across all the 6 states in the Southwest geopolitical zone. And then we're left with 5 more states to go. And in 2 years, we're looking at covering Nigeria. And we're not just sensitizing as one off approach. As we sensitize, we train youth corps members that will carry on this project and then trickle down to grassroots primary health care facilities. We work with medical doctors that are youth corps members to train doctors and nurses at grassroots level after being trained by our own professionals on how to effectively manage this condition. So you work with people across, you know, the local groups in their local languages, work with opinion leaders to shape and shift culture. Across religious institutions as well, we have the HFI project, where we connect and work with religious. In Nigeria, people believe they are pastors, then they are doctors. People believe they are imams than they are doctors. So if we inform these people, teach these people, they hold influence and wield enough power to prevail on people under their care to actually make informed decisions that will help us reduce the burden. So and then we're also coming up with a film. We've shot the film because, of course, we are in the media age. Social media is the eighth continent of the world. You have young people in that space as well. So we have a new film coming up on the 28th of this month. It's called Red Oil. And it tells the story of the psychosocial damage that sickle cell disorder causes amongst different strata of society. And it's a powerful tool that will help us drive advocacy as well.
It's a good one. How about the workplace?
Yeah, the workplace, I think there needs to be a shift. There's still massive, segregation and stigmatization for persons living with this condition. In the West, in the UK, for example, sickle cell is not a big deal anymore. Because I can have sickle cell disorder, and then there are a lot of DIY, do-it-yourself tips for persons living with this condition, even at workplaces. They give them concessions. They give them breaks. They are considerate, and they accommodate what we call weakness. And they put structures in place to provide care for them, as much as reducing air-conditioned temperature. Because once they're exposed to cold in the workplace, it can trigger crisis. Transportation services, they give them buses, to see that transportation back and forth reduces any form of stress factor that can induce crisis as well. And then they can go to hospitals and by themselves, they can, do blood transfusion. Because shortage of blood happens a lot for persons living in this condition. You just go to the hospital and then you just plug and transfuse yourself. While transfusing, you're working on your laptop, and then you're not in a hurry to go to work per se, because your workplace have structure and allowance to accommodate some of this thing. But in Nigeria here, a boss will tell you, I cannot hire someone that has sickle cell disorder because I don't want to carry the liability of weakness. If anything happens, what am I supposed to say? We put profit over empathy. And it doesn't speak well of us as as a nation, because we need to take responsibility for our own. So at the place of work, people living in this condition are super intelligent and brilliant. I have a big friend, a big dear friend of mine. She's called Mrs. Aino. She's 75 years old, and she has 71-year-old. She has sickle cell disorder. She worked in the bank for 25 years. Her eldest son is 41-year-old, and she's striving. And she contributed her quota into, our economic development generally. They have a lot to give. They have a lot to deliver. But if we don't give them the opportunity and platform in the place of work, we won't even see this thing come to the fore.
So what's the date for this awareness campaign?
Oh, yeah. So we have a walk coming up on the 28th of this month. And our muster point is at Ikeja Local Government Secretariat. So we're taking off from there. We're walking, we're sensitizing. A blood drive would also be going on simultaneously because our people need blood. They need blood to live. So for every good, well-meaning Nigerian in Lagos State and environs that want to join us to increase the tempo and the volume on sickle cell disorder, to get relevant bodies, international community, to put this as front burner of conversations, I think it's an opportunity and avenue to join us as well.
Okay, we have to thank you very much for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, the date again and the time?
28th of June, 2025. That's next week, Saturday.
Okay.
And the time for convergence is 9 a.m. And the venue is at Ikeja Local Government Secretariat.
Are there some people, who are the people that can come, who are the people that cannot?
Everyone can come.
Okay.
Everyone can come.
Okay. Yeah. Irrespective of my age.
Oh, definitely. The more, the merrier.
Thank you so much for your time this morning.
You, sir.
Caleb Audu is Communications Director, Sickle Cell Foundation of Nigeria, talking to us about sickle cell awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.